Yeah, that'll be fine. Can you hear me? Whoa, yes, I think you can. Good, that woke everybody up. After lunch is always a hard time to start. I hope you're having fun because we're going to do an experiment. This is literally the first time I've done it this way, but I have to tell you why. When I found out I was going to be moderating this group and this discussion from a business perspective, I went, huh? Why me? What am I supposed to do? And that bothered me, especially when I saw the membership list. These are some distinguished people. And then I was going down to my grandson's birthday, and I was listening to NPR, as I tend to do. It was Radio Lab. And they were talking to two improv comics, but the nature of their improv was quite unique. They started with a blank slate. They turn off the lights, turn on the lights, and they would start from zero. And they were asked, doesn't it scare you that nothing will happen? And they said, yeah, in the beginning it did. But then they found a model. It's the model we're going to use today. They said, we imagine this is an ongoing story, and we're just stepping into it. And the story will tell itself out, and we'll be part of the way that story is told. So I'm literally stepping into the story that Denise started quite a while ago. We're stepping into it, all of us. And we're going to go with the flow. And the beauty of this situation is I've got some very intelligent people here in the room. First of all, one thing I know is they can all read. So I don't have to read the questions. And the second part of it is I'm going to ask each one of them, and I'll even participate in this, to pick a topic, pick one of those questions, those topics, and explain to us what that means from your perspective. And the key here is this is an expansionist process. We're not trying to reduce this down to anything yet. We are, I think, in keeping with what Denise has asked us to do, we need to expand our option space because there's some very unique challenges in here. So each one of us are going to take these questions, or these statements, problems, and expand on it from our own individual perspective. Now we happen to represent the business community. How I got tagged with that, I'm not sure, but that's who we are today. So we'll take that perspective as we do. Once we've expanded on this, here comes the fun part. As Brian leads off and picks one, I don't care which one, we're going to, I hope Denise didn't have these in order, because I'm going to scramble her order. Pick one, you'll give us your perspective, and then it's the job of the other four to answer that question as it has been reinterpreted. And we're going to go around until we've all got a chance to show our perspective on a question. And by the way, I'll go last and I'll have the fewest questions to pick if you can't pick one, so you can ask. So with that, Brian, you're on the hot seat. Pick one of those topics and give us your interpretation of it.
First of all, I'm only up here because it's easier to fill a chair than take it off the stage. So that's my disclaimer. Just saying. A little bit of context. I am one of her graduate students, and I entered the program about 3 years ago with a KM, Knowledge Management concentration. And quite truthfully and sincerely, I did not know what that meant. I'm a retired GI who had VA benefits, thank you, to use up, and I am. But very quickly on, I became tremendously convinced of the value and the import behind knowledge management. However, as I continue to tell her and everyone that asks me about it, it's a remarkably blurry-edged phantom. Just about the time that I think I have an image or impression, it evaporates. It's gone. So I want to start with that. From a business perspective, I am a small business owner, and we have 5 locations, a good handful of employees. So I speak the business language, point 1. Point 2, after having retired from the military, I had my fill, if you will, of enterprise class frustration, challenges, egos, problems, and opportunities, quite frankly. I'm a hometown boy, and I was happy to come back to Louisville, Ohio. However, I was an early adopter in 1983 of computers. Now, this isn't all about computers, and everyone keeps talking about that. It's about knowledge. But I have found out that the description of what Mayor Healy experienced in Canton is so true everywhere. It's almost like we're talking about 2 different realities. To hear our third keynote speaker this morning talking about the future of the semantic web, and hear Mayor Healy fighting with unions about whether we can get rid of word perfect, it astounds me. But it's true. So I made the decision upon retiring that I was going to work exclusively in this program on behalf of small business. And I'm probably, and I think Dr. Bedford would vouch for me, I'm probably the only one in the world who's doing KM for small business, because everyone else is trying to solve enterprise class problems with enterprise class tools and enterprise priced budgets. Now, that all being said, I haven't gotten to anything on here yet. The point that I try to bring, where I try to enter this conversation, I will just give you as a vignette, and I'll attempt to answer one of them if it comes out right. I have a number of friends and acquaintances who are single practice attorneys, and they seem to be able to bill out at X amount of dollars per hour for their legal work. Let's say it's $175. And then I have other acquaintances who are partners in big law firms, and they seem to be able to get about twice that amount for their hours of legal work. And so it brings me to an academic and theoretical question. Why is your legal knowledge more valuable than his? And is it strictly because you have more overhead you have to pay for, or because partners paid their dues early and they're entitled to more? And the answer that everyone brings up is basically what we all would say: they have more embedded knowledge in that law practice. And so I try to probe into that and say, but how do you cross it? How do you grow it? How do you share it? How do you find it? And the answers are often very unsatisfactory. They don't do it any better than the single clerk law office. And yet, because they're the big organizations, the big consulting firms, the big whatever, they lay claim to a lot of expertise that may or may not have made its way within the organization. So I then take that insight to the small business owner. And here's the principal takeaway, and then I'm going to hand this off. I will ask someone, what if Joe Blow from your organization got hit by a car today and didn't come in tomorrow? And the answer invariably is, pardon my French, we'd be screwed. If that's the case, that's a problem of knowledge, not workforce. It means that that person has all the knowledge required for your organization to succeed locked up in their head and nowhere else. And that's the principal driving force between motivating my knowledge, sciences, research, and business application. Helping a small business, and I'm going to emphasize that, that's the only one I really apply to. Helping a small business answer that question of how do you avoid the risk of not knowing what you need to know or losing what you already know. And I consider that to be of significant business value, and it's not a solution that's easily had out in the world today. So that's where I apply my energy. I don't know if I've answered anything up there. If I haven't, I'm sorry. I hope.
Actually, no, don't hand it off quite yet. He's not done. One of the things I was hoping to see out of this model was emergence. We just saw it because I hadn't counted for the sharing of the personal perspective. But that's important because now, Brian, we understand your personal perspective on this. And by the way, from talking to people, you're not the only one in this room interested in small business. There are several people in here of like mind. And now we understand your perspective. So from that perspective, being focused with that military background, being focused on the small business, having the unclarity of what knowledge management is supposed to be all about, what does it mean? And now I get to pick the question. We'll take number 2. What is that statement? What kind of activity should the center support or enable? Explain the question, not the answer. What does that question mean to you from your perspective?
I rather prefer her key takeaways with blank pages, and I get to write whatever I want. So I'm going to. There's someone out here, I saw a name tag that said Business Development Center. Okay. I'm not sure if I'm in the right ballpark with you, but what I understand, is it the KSU Business Development Center over here, sir? Okay. And I'm glad to hear that that's what it was. The concept I have is that a knowledge center, let's call it, would do something similar to what you do and or what SCORE does. And if you're familiar with SCORE, it's the basically retired business executives who assist upstarts in business with concepts and practices and understanding and skills to shore them up during their foundational years, and to take the sliver of knowledge, I don't care if it's a roofer, a trucker, a dentist, that then has to be buttressed by all kinds of other knowledge. And so, to me, the center would provide that buttressing activity. We don't want to become a society and a business society of generalists. We need specialists. The dentist is a specialist, okay? The lawyer is a specialist. Many of the information practitioners out there can only do their work, their primary domain, work well if they can focus rather exclusively on that. But as a small business owner, they don't have the luxury of that exclusive focus. We, as a center, would have to buttress them. You know, think every one of you out there probably has gone through numerous generations of smartphones, tablets, PDAs, you name it. That's costly to buy, research, learn, discard. Small businesses do the same thing in every single aspect of software, hardware, technology, processes. Who do I get for payroll? Who do I, that's knowledge. And it's a remarkably daunting task. That's why most businesses fail within the first 3 years. And let me end at that. I've got plenty of opinions, but not as much time as I have opinions here.
So I'm going to add some interpretation to the question to give you something to key off, Mike. When I read that question, what kind of activities should the center support enable? A couple of questions come to my mind. I'll give you my interpretation. First of all, what is an activity? What's the domain of activities? Are they research? Are they publication? Are they facilitators? These are the type of activities that start to run through my mind. And the other thing is the concept of the center itself. Is it one location? Is it a network? And then enable. What does it mean for something this center, whether it's network or physical, anything, what does it mean to enable through those activities? I'd like to hear your responses on that.
I was hoping that was a rhetorical question. I think you hit on a couple of really good ones there. This idea of being able to facilitate and research, I think, is an excellent piece for a center like this, located within or at an academic organization. I think as I would answer that question, I would look probably down at some of the other questions like the business model there and the mobilization of intellectual capital. And I'd start there by asking, where's the intellectual capital? And if that's out in the organizations, then how does the activities of the center get at those points of intellectual capital within the organization? How does it bring them together to facilitate the right kinds of conversations where we're really connecting people and around a particular content? And that content may be something that's been researched, maybe some tool, it might be some methodology that's been developed, but it also may be the tacit knowledge that lies within the heads of those people that they bring together. So to me, most importantly, the key activity is that they bring people together to connect them. So, as you step forward and look back, kind of this emerging piece here that you're talking about, I would say, I could see the center hosting forums like this that they could bring different sized businesses in, and whether they mix those or focus on small business one time and large business another because of the differences in challenges, how do they bring them in and allow them to bring their problems to the table and now have a group of people here like we do today to be able to swarm on that particular problem, so when they leave, they're a lot further toward a solution than they were when they came to the group. How does the center provide those and facilitate those conversation cafes, the process mappings, the things that kind of need to go on so that it's not just about telling us what we need to do, it's really actually doing it for a few particular problems while your group is pulled together for a day or two. And maybe we do that, every quarter, every, couple times a year, something like that.
It's David, right? David, from the way I rephrase the question, and before we start, what is your business perspective like? Are you a small business owner, or are you?
I'm a small business owner, and we focus on consulting, but we do it with large businesses.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll start. What's your business perspective?
Right now, I'm a member of a small consulting firm with 7 of us. Most of our clients are Fortune 100 or large federal government departments.
Okay. So from that perspective, a small business, as a member of a small business, which is probably the center will serve you as a small business, and as in the way you serve your clients with a large business perspective. So you've got that unique double perspective. What is that? What does it mean when we ask the question of what type of activity with the center? And again, what does the center look like a little bit in here? And what does it do to enable?
Okay. We always come at anything like this from a purpose fit. So first, we need to define the purpose of the center as a whole and the stakeholder. And then, as was said before, knowledge management in general is a very amorphous knowledge. But if we take a stakeholder and our main purpose and derive activities in the context of that particular stakeholder, and take it so small business, and take large business or academia, and decompose from our major purpose down to activities, always tying what we do back to that purpose very clearly. And that makes sure that what we're doing is helping achieve our goal. Now, that being said, in our work, companies that adopt this fully always have a center of excellence in the company. And we train the center of excellence people, it's usually a relatively small group, and then they train others in their organization to go out and do projects. And the activity of the Center of Excellence is when those practitioners are out there doing a project, they periodically come back and bring their lessons learned from what they did and share it with the other practitioners, who then go out and do other projects. And the Center of Excellence, I believe, like this center, becomes the repository of the knowledge of how what works well and what doesn't work, and lets the whole knowledge base grow and evolve.
So would it be fair to say you see this as kind of a meta center of excellence, where it's, we talk about communities of practice, this would be a community of communities of practice. Is that a fair interpretation of how you view this?
I think that is, because people who focus on small business are going to have some certain perspectives that add to the whole, and people focusing on large business, people doing research, they can all learn from each other. And one other thing I'll say is the only way I've ever seen this work is there is a champion, a thought leader in the organization who dedicates themselves to making this happen in their organization. And so we support the champions. Champions are the one out there that are going to do the work, whether they're in a city or neighborhood or business. Those champions are the ones that are actually going to do it. We support them.
Okay. Good. And I have to apologize. Up to now, my eyesight has been adequate to read name tags, but I can't read. Right? Diana, how do you see this? And first of all, what's your business perspective?
I'm actually coming at it, I believe I'm the only one up here from an enterprise standpoint. Time Warner Cable, obviously a large organization. Way back in 2007, we realized how much we didn't know about what we know, and sat down and worked out a systematic combination of all the little individual systems that had been built throughout our enterprise and combined them into one large system. I believe that we were one of the pioneers in putting this together, and I believe that we've done a good job, but we've done it kind of secluded from the rest of the world. So we don't know what we're doing, if it's correct, if we're following any type of roadmap from anyone else. And that's one of the things I was looking more at the question of number 3, the effective engagement model. I think, and perhaps maybe back into number 2, one of the things this particular center may be involved in is setting those standards that we don't have in knowledge as an industry. There are very few academic programs in the country that are available for people to come up through this industry, and it's emerging and changing and becoming organic, and I believe that people are getting to the level of maturity that we're at the point where we need standards. The internet is the great equivalator, if you will. Mr. Small Business and me can be the same on the internet, and that's because of these standards that were put forth there. I believe also in a knowledge world, a small business and a large enterprise can operate similarly due to standards if we can set those moving forward. I also believe as far as activities or engagement models, as David said, I believe they need to be the repository of business cases. They need to be the repository of success stories so that those can be put forth when other people are launching these types of systems. Support for systems that are launching, or even employee engagement for the resisting employees. I personally still am fighting with the knowledge hoarders within our enterprise. And those people need to be educated on the value of the system and really understand it. And internally, I don't know that that's necessarily something that we can convey properly. And a center like this could possibly help in that respect.
Okay. Some of the things that you were talking about, being a repository for business use cases, things like this, lessons learned, setting standards. We have some people, there are organizations out there that do APQC. It's famous for their business cases. You know, how would you see the activities of this center paralleling or being distinct from something like APQC does.
If you are set up in a network situation across country or across regions, then certainly you're receiving feedback. The whole idea of knowledge in general and what we're doing day to day is collaboration and connecting. The center needs to be a model of what they're modeling. They need to be a connector and a collector, and they need to collect those stories from different levels of business and different sizes of businesses, and those can be their content management.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Mike, it's your turn to pick the topic question we're going to be focusing on, and I want to hear your interpretation of that topic.
So a minute ago, I was talking about the effective engagement models. You know, how do we bring these people in, and you know, we can either connect them virtually into our repositories and sharing stories and lessons learned that way, or we can bring them here and actually, you know, work together, I think. So my interpretation of the effective engagement model then is that methodology that we're going to use to get them in the room and start having the conversation. And the room could be defined virtually as well as physically. It could easily be done through webinars now, where we're sharing our successes, some of our struggles and challenges as we've gone through those, and what we've learned from them with other folks. Because as businesses do that, you know, every time I hear somebody talk about one of their stories, I'm learning something that applies to my business or somebody I've worked with. So that's what we want, is we want to embed those stories, I think, in people, so they can take those stories back and put their company's spin on that story, a like story, and be able to use that with their leadership to actually move things forward.
Okay, so in that question, and you picked number 3, which I think is one I was going to start with. My being dyslexic, I think I flipped the digit. Engagement. That's the word in that statement that leaves me open for interpretation. What does it mean for the center to engage with business? Does it mean, I mean, I can think of multiple interpretations. The center could engage with business to get funding and support. We could engage in like a virtual learning thing where the center is actually the teacher to the businesses. It could be where the facilitator of conversation, that engagement, that alignment, or that point of alignment, that point in time, that knowledge event in which the center, that whatever the center is, comes in contact with business. How do you define that? How do you see that?
Well, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is you know, they're the ones that are facilitating this discussion, and it's not a center to business, business to center. It's the center getting businesses to businesses and talking about the lessons learned. You know,
Okay.
and that's the engagement that I'm picturing in my mind.
That's good. I like it. And how do you see it, David? Oh, 2 to choose from.
It's very interesting. I used the phrase at lunch, I think we need to eat our own dog food. I think we need to apply everything we've talked about to ourselves. And what I think we're talking about here is basically knowledge transfer. Either knowledge transfer from a business to the center, or knowledge transfer from the center to a business, or facilitating knowledge transfer between business A and business B. And there are not that many of us in the country. And a lot of people may feel like they're alone in their company, or they've invented something in their company and they want to know if what they're doing is good, if there's better ways and something. So by providing a forum for different people, for different individuals to come and talk and share and learn, whether it's an interpersonal communication, face-to-face or virtually, or if it's a repository of business cases and studies that somebody could use, And I want to jump down to number 6. If we have a model of how we operate as a center, if we model ourselves, that model could be easily replicated in other places. We just need people in California who are interested in these topics and want to take, we've got the model, and it embeds all the knowledge that we're here these 2 days to gather all this knowledge about how a center like this would work. Let's transfer that.
I like where you went with that, because at one time in the webinars leading up to this, we were talking about these models, and that same kind of thing came to my mind. But what, from a business perspective, what struck me was that was a franchise model.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a center. If you look at that, in my mind, I see the center's role as establishing the business model and perhaps being, the initial outlet within the franchise chain. But in reality, most of the activity is going to go out in the network, and that network is enabled by the business model that came out of the center. So it's the meta model for the rest of the network, the rest of the nodes. But then that asks the question, does Time Warner go to the node or to the franchise home office? How would Time Warner want to engage with that? Let's say you had 6 different nodes that had joined this network that were now available. How would you pick which one of those nodes you go to, or would you just gravitate because of the size of your organization from the gravitas that an enterprise puts forth versus small business? How would you as Time Warner, you get to speak for a huge company. I'm sure there are some people out there going, wait a minute. But if you're speaking for Time Warner, how would you choose to engage with the center?
Because of our business model internally, we all roll up into one office. We have an enterprise office, and knowledge management is a business line, if you will, within the enterprise. So through that business line is how we would engage, whether it be the head office of that or whether my counterparts across the country would engage directly. I believe that we would encourage the entire downline to be able to engage, to learn, and to understand the things that are happening in other areas. And when you get into engagement, I was explaining my job to someone at lunch. Time Warner operates, if you will, as a dozen different small companies. I have an engineering company. I have a marketing company. I have a customer care and call center operation. I have front counters that take payments. All of these different silos operate separately, and our job as knowledge managers is to interpret information going back and forth between those separate industries, if you will, because they all have to be specialists within their particular
each with their own
organization.
perspectives.
Right, and each have a different focus, a different end game. And knowledge is information until it has an end use. The end use in engineering is entirely different from the end use in customer care, and the language is different. I can't take an engineering package and speak in that language on the phone to a customer. So that has to be interpreted, has to be reworded, has to be made possible for that end use. And I think the center could help other industries to engage in that activity and help to interpret those type of languages between different prospects.
That's excellent. I'm seeing how you've got Mike. You get to pick the next topic. Are we running out of time? That was the one thing I forgot to ask is how much time do we have?
And this is wonderful. I hate to say let's transition to the next panel, but I think we have to.
Thank you. Otherwise, I never would have known how to stop.